Now, I had intended this week to move on to the front end of the T100. The forks need to be stripped and rebuilt, and there are various other MOTONE goodies that are destined to be put on the front end. But there was this nagging doubt in the back of my head that that bulbous rear mudguard on the bike was just spoiling everything that we've done so far, and that really it needed to be addressed before we went any further. Now, ultimately, we do have a solution for the back end of the bike, but in simple terms, it's not ready yet. MOTONE Customs are still working on the number plate bracket, and without it, I wouldn't be able to keep the bike on the road, which is one of the original rules that we decided on when this project started. So I had a word with MOTONE Customs, and we decided as an interim measure that we were going to fit one of their famous tail tardies and incorporate the new light and indicators to at least make the back end look acceptable before we move over to the front end. Now, a tail tardy, by virtue of what it actually is, isn't meant to be seen, but the visual effect that it has on the bike is startling. And I'll go on to how it should be fitted a little bit later on. Although the tail tardy is going to be replaced later on, the tail light and the indicators are not. We chose the MOTONE Customs brushed aluminium indicators. Now, these are amazing quality. The CNC machine from 6061 aluminium billet, and they come complete with an OEM quality Osram amber bulb. The camera really doesn't do these indicators justice. With the classic bullet shape, each pair of indicators comes with a choice of amber or clear lenses, so they can be tailored to suit your own personal preferences. They fasten onto the bike with a 10mm stainless steel threaded shaft, and they're pre-wired with standard bullet connectors, which makes fitting a simple plug and play affair with MOTONE's standard wiring harness, which I believe comes with the tail tardy. These were fitted in conjunction with MOTONE's Belair tail light, and this is 100% 1960s automotive Americana. This is a serious piece of polished motorcycle bling. It's high pressure die cast aluminium with a 60s style crossbar featuring a bullet shaped centre boss. But even though the look may be classic, it has bang up to date SMD LED lighting technology built inside, with a clear window on the underside incorporating a number plate light. Again, this is just a plug and play unit if you have MOTONE's wiring harness. Putting these together, I think, is a killer combination, and I can't wait to see what they're going to look like with that final solution that we've got in mind. But this episode doesn't stop there. We thought that while we were sorting out the back end, it gave us the opportunity to replace the front mudguard as well. This is a relatively new product from MOTONE. Again, a nod to the 1960s bike culture with this polished all alloy 3/4 length race blade. It's a sturdy piece of kit that's been hand rolled rather than pressed, precisely cut and drilled to fit the Bonneville exactly, with a mirror finish that you could literally shave in. So without further ado, on to the fitting. Now, this is basically the same tail tardy that MOTONE have been making for the last 2 or 3 years. It's all one piece, and apart from putting the indicators and the tail light on, there's no assembly required. It's made from a high grade aluminium sheet that's been laser cut and then black powder coated. Now, you may have already seen other YouTubers that have made videos on how to fit this particular tail tardy, but be aware, the fitting method has now changed slightly. In order to bring the tail tardy closer up to the bottom of the seat rail for a tighter, neater fit, MOTONE have updated the fasteners, and whereas the isolastic mountings with the top hat spacers used to be left in place, they now need to be removed prior to fitting the tail tardy. And that's the two at the rear at the very tail of the bike, and the two that are hidden underneath all that electricery about midway along the seat rail. Now, in your kit you'll find 4 replacement stainless steel bolts, 4 nylock nuts and 8 stainless steel washers. In addition to this, you'll also get 4 aluminium spacers. Now, MOTONE have adjusted this kit assuming that the 2 separate wires from your indicators and the wire from your tail light will be threaded separately through the rear of the frame and the top of the tail tardy, in which case there will be plenty of clearance. But I personally don't like that look. I just wanted the appearance of one cable being threaded through, so I used an 8mm heat shrink sleeve to encase the 3 cables for a neater install. Unfortunately, this does double the height of that bundle of cables, and I found there wasn't quite enough clearance. So if you want to go down that route like I did, which I think some people will, take the top hat spacers out but leave the rubbers at the rear of the frame in place. This will effectively give you about 1/4 of an inch extra clearance in order to get that bundle of cables through. On the forward part of the seat rail underneath the electrics, remove both the rubber and the top hat spacers. Now, I personally think that before attempting to fit this, it's a good idea to attach your tail light by threading your cable through the hole in the back of the tail tardy, inserting the tooth studs through the plate, and then using the supplied brass nuts to fasten it up. I just think it's easier to install it before you've actually got it on the bike. It's then time to offer it up to the bike. The way I did it is to loosely install the 2 most rearward bolts, inserting 2 of the spacers over the bolts between the tail tardy and the frame plate. Just fasten it up loosely for now, and then repeat the same procedure at the 2 front fastening points, using 2 washers for each fastener, 1 between the nut and the tail tardy and 1 between the bolt head and your frame. At this stage, just engage the threads on the nuts so that they're safe and won't fall off. Don't tighten everything up yet, because the next step is to fit the indicators and get your wiring sorted out, and you're going to need a bit of jiggling room. Using the fasteners supplied with your indicators, make sure that they're straight and tighten the nuts up. For aesthetic purposes, I did actually put some more heat shrink over the threads on the indicators just to take the eye off them. It's entirely up to you what you do and how you go about it here. I then threaded a narrow gauge heat shrink over that to try and effect a more weather-tight seal. Unfortunately, the only heat shrink sleeving that I had in that size was blue, which probably wasn't the best choice. But I thought I would go ahead and do it anyway, just to give you a general idea on how to go about it. Heat shrink sleeving is very cheap, and you can buy it in multi-packs to the point where it's literally a penny a piece. It's really handy stuff to have in when you're doing a job like this, although it might be an idea just to get a pack where all the different sizes are in black. Once you've got your indicators on and you've done whatever you need to do with the heat shrink, thread your cable through, and it's now time to make all the necessary connections. MOTONE's wiring loom is quite simply a plug and play product. It comes with a standard factory plug at one end, which just plugs straight into your bike. The only complicated bit is the connections at the other end to be made up to the tail light and the indicators. I'll take you through it. Right, starting with your tail light. The red wire from your tail light goes to the blue wire on your harness. Black wire from your tail light goes to the black wire on the harness. And finally, the yellow wire from your tail light goes to the red wire on your wiring harness. Now, these bullet connectors are a very positive connection, but just to reinforce it and to protect them, I used some heat shrink over each of those connections. Once it's been shrunk down, it does serve to reinforce those connections and helps prevent them from being pulled apart. Now, each of your indicators has 1 black wire and 1 red wire. On your harness, there is a black wire with a double connector on it. And from your indicators, you should connect both black wires from each indicator up to that double black connector on your harness. You then connect the red wire from your left hand indicator up to the orange wire on the wiring harness. Then your right indicator's red wire should connect up to the brown wire on the harness. There is one spare red wire on the harness with a double connector. You don't need this in this application. Again, I used heat shrink over these. Just go through your tail light and your indicators, make sure everything works correctly, including your brake light through both your handbrake and your foot brake, and then tidy all your wiring up and make sure that it's not going to get damaged whilst fitting your seat or get trapped in anything. So once you're satisfied that's all as it should be, it's time to tighten up the fasteners on the tail tidy. Now for the front part, the part underneath those electrics, tighten your fasteners up fully, and do the same at the rear if you've chosen not to bundle your cables together as I did. Now if you have followed the way that I did it, obviously those rubber grommets will crush, so you need to tighten them up judiciously. What I would say is just tighten them up to the point where the thread goes just past the nylock part of the nut, so that you know it's not going to come unfastened, and leave it at that. As a tail tidy, this is a very neat and tidy solution. MOTONE have left nothing to chance, and they've taken every obstruction into consideration when they've designed it. Now I don't propose to go into too much detail over fitting the front fender, because at the end of the day it is just a front fender. It's 4 small bolts. Now I did have some memory card issues while I was filming this, so there is some footage missing. The main hassle really is getting the original fender off the bike, and I would start by removing the bolts that hold the fender stays onto the forks, and then it's up to you. You can unfasten the 4 bolts at the top that hold the actual fender onto the bridge mounting piece between the 2 fork legs. But in order to remove the actual fender from the bike, you're going to have to remove one of those stays from the fender. Whether that be the front or the back is entirely up to you. I chose to remove the front stay and then just slid the fender backwards away from the bike. And then all that's left is to attach your new fender back onto the bridge between the 2 fork legs, using the original 4 bolts that you took off. I personally didn't have any problems with alignment, everything just fitted straight first time, but there is a little bit of play with the holes that have been drilled into the MOTONE fender, so just make sure that you do align it properly as you fasten it down. Now, I've never experienced this with any other bike, and it's a Bonneville thing, I know that now. And I'm sure all you Bonneville owners that are watching this can relate to it. And that is that wherever you go, wherever you park, these bikes attract a lot of attention. And I personally found that it's a rare thing to park anywhere without someone coming over to have a chat about the bike, or simply to just stop in the tracks to admire it from a distance. And I had that with the T100 right from the start. But one thing that I have become acutely aware of is that since I started to make some progress with the gradual customization or modification of this bike, that attention and interest has ramped up substantially. And I can only put that down to the unique combination of quality bolt-on parts that have been put on this bike, and the way that they make this bike stand out from the rest. Whilst I was filming this outdoor segment for this video, bearing in mind this was on a country road miles from anywhere, I had a total of 3 cars where the drivers pulled over, parked up, and came over for the express reason of just wanting to have a look at the bike and chat to me about it. Okay, one of them was on the pretense that he thought I'd broken down, but I think that was an excuse. Now, I have owned a lot of bikes over the years, and I've never experienced that with any other make or model of motorcycle. And I think that is the unique magic that a Bonneville puts into your life when you take ownership of it. And there's no doubt about it, this bike is starting to stand out from the crowd. Now, that's it for this week. In the next episode, we will be making a start on the front end of the bike. I'll be back on Friday as usual. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it and that you've found it interesting. If you have enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. So until next time, ride carefully, and I'll see you soon.